Hi, so I'm going to be talking about the book review assignment that we have been given, and the title of the book is called Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson. The book is under the young adults fiction genre, and it is written in 1999. So here's a really brief summary of the plot, and it's basically about Melinda Sordino, who begins her freshman year and at age 14, that means she's in the ninth grade at Meriwether High School in Syracuse, New York. She has a really heavy secret to bear, and it was because of over the summer when she and her friends went partying, she ended up calling the police, causing her friends to reject and ostracize her after that. And when school reopened and when she went to school, her only friend was Heather because she was the new kid and because all her old friends didn't want to talk to her. And Heather wanted to gain popularity and Melinda just wasn't interested. So most of the time, Melinda spends time in the abandoned janitor's closet at school, which she regards as her little sanctuary and something that a place that she goes to when she wants to be away from everyone else. It's her little safe zone, and she does not like interacting with anyone else. She starts to spiral to depression. She loses her ability to speak and to verbalize herself anymore, and her only solace at school was art class, where she works on a year-long project to create various interpretations of a tree. In school hallways, she occasionally sees Andy Evans, who she regards as it, and she slowly begins to realize and face what he did to her. Whenever he sees her, he antagonizes her the way that will make her relive her initial experience with him, and she grows even worse and she spirals even deeper into depression, and she starts to not speak up, and her grade starts to spiral downwards, and she goes into self-harm, and everything starts going downhill. After a while, Melinda finally admits to herself that Andy Evans actually raped her at the party last summer, and that was actually why she called the cops, and no one knew about this until almost the very end of the story. After facing the fact that she was raped, she began to recover from the trauma and event, and she started to accept the fact that it had happened and it cannot be changed. Melinda sees that Andy Evans is dating her ex-best friend Rachel, and she feels the need to warn her. She eventually tells Rachel that he raped her at the party, and she doesn't believe Melinda. At the very end, she tries to rape Melinda again. Andy Evans tries to rape Melinda again, but she fights back and speaks up for herself. Andy was caught in action with the whole school knew what happened. The story ends with Melinda finishing her year-long art project, and she's finally happy with how it looks, alive, just like she'd wanted it. She confided in Mr. Freeman to tell him what had happened throughout the year, and she is now happy. Okay, now let's speak about Melinda Sordino, and she is our protagonist for our story, Speak. Now, she studies in Meriwether High School. She is a ninth grader, that means she's 14 years old, and she is a rape victim. Okay, so here are some of the traits displayed by Melinda Sordino throughout the whole story. We can tell that she's depressed and insecure, she's in denial, and she's misunderstood, and later on we will see her development and growth throughout the story. These traits, depressed and insecure, denial, and misunderstood, basically stems from the problem where she is actually a rape victim. Now let's look at being depressed and insecure. Let's see. Okay. So she's depressed and insecure due to her rape, and then she is unable to speak about the incident. She has lost her ability to verbalize her feelings anymore, and because of that, she is ostracized by her friends. No one speaks to her, no one wants to talk to her. She's left alone, and she is the outcast. And she also wished that she didn't exist. In the story, she has mentioned that she wished she didn't exist, or there are times that she wished she wanted to disappear. And then another cause of the depression and insecurity would be her family issues. Her family home front isn't exactly all that happy. She has quite a haphazard and chaotic family life. And now let's look at denial. You could say that she was in denial because she was unsure if she was considered that she was raped, because she was also slightly drunk at that time, and she actually imagined a whole Oprah talk show which actually helped her which actually helped her open up and realize that she was actually being raped, and that's how she actually noticed that it was real and that she was actually a rape victim. Okay, Melinda Sordino is misunderstood simply because she got raped and she called the police at the party, but when the police showed up, there was she had already they did not find her, but only a bunch of underage teenage drinkers, and her friends got the wrong impression because she wasn't there to explain. So everyone thought that she called the police just to get them in trouble. Her parents also assumed that her bad behavior in school was a cry for attention. Now let's look at her growth and development throughout the story. Okay, so she finally admits to herself that she was raped after the Oprah live talk show, and then that basically led to her starting to improve herself. And then she also decided to leave the closet, her janitor's closet, where she found as her safe space in school. Her grades started improving, her attendance, and she started having a new perception towards things. She also stands up for herself, and that's at the end of the story, where Andy Evans, her rapist, actually tried to assault her again for the second time, tried to rape her again for the second time in her closet, and she actually stands up to him and threatens him and tells him no, no is no. And then the story actually ends with her confiding to Mr. Freeman. That's how the story ends. And that's about Melinda Sordino. Now, for my personal response, I will start with the plot. The plot is quite straightforward, with the climax occurring towards only at the end of the story, and the plot emphasized a lot of Melinda's conflicts within herself and her struggles of coming to terms with what had happened. You can see that she has gone through lots of trauma, self-conflict, realization, and eventually she is liberated. In my opinion, the plot is rather straightforward and expected, as a rape victim would suffer from depression considering her circumstances. I felt that it was quite boring and predictable. I also felt that after all Melinda had to go through, I would have preferred if Andy suffered a little bit more for what he had done. I also felt that the protagonist of the story could have given more thought and reflection in her actions. We often see her threading along and not so much actively thinking of overcoming the issue. I'd like to compare this book to The Diary of Anne Frank. Anne Frank suffered from depression as well, had no friends, verbally abusive parents, and is about the same age as Melinda Sordino. Both of them had barely had any means to express themselves, but found an alternative way. Melinda through art, and Anne Frank through writing. Anne Frank's life was threatened as she was a Jew during the World War II era, and Melinda Sordino in present time. We do not know much about Melinda's personality and character prior to this, but based on her decisions and thinking in the narration of her story, we know that she probably wasn't the wisest of people to have gone through such things. She has went to the party and shouldn't have been doing drinking, and shouldn't have been doing those things. Anne Frank, on the other hand, was more mature for her age, and she had along the way reflected and criticized her own actions and has a better set of morals, as she knows what is morally acceptable and what would have been unwise of her actions. Also, it would have been nice to know a bit more about Melinda's background and how she was before the incident had happened, so the reader could get a clearer picture on the incline and the decline of her journey. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the writing style. Hold on. Okay, there we go. The writing style to me was a little bit choppy. It was in a choppy and narrative style, and in my opinion, failed to retain my attention throughout the book. I prefer something more adventurous and a little bit more self-reflective. I was trying to empathize with Melinda, but because it was written in such a choppy way, I had difficulty doing so. It would have been interesting to learn a bit more about the other characters as well, as opposed to having so much of the story, too much, in my opinion, going revolving around Melinda. There were also parts of symbolism in the book. For these bits, she spoke in a very symbolic way. I felt that I could relate to her. Her symbolism had acted as a form of her thoughts and helped readers understand Melinda's thought process and feelings further. Usually, a depressed person tends to find ways to express themselves without being direct, so symbolism is what they usually fall back on, and the author wrote beautiful words to symbolize Melinda's feelings. Now, my personal response on the few characters in the book. Here we go. Okay, I have chosen to talk about Melinda Sordino, Andy Evans, Heather, Mr. Freeman, Nicole Rachel, and Ivy. Melinda Sordino, she is depressed, alone, afraid, and in denial. I feel a sense of admiration to have stuck it for her to have stuck it through with her depression even after taking a long time. She managed to come to realization that she has been raped. Even when she has lost her dignity, reputation, friends, and almost everything in her life that's worth living for, she still fights on and eventually succeeded and broke free from those depths of depression. Now, the next character, Andy Evans. He is mean, a male chauvinist, and very abusive. Not much was told about his background, but from the book we know that he takes advantage of girls. Unfortunately, people like Andy exist in the real world too. More people should be aware of things like this happening, and both the female and males of society must be educated on this to prevent incidences like this from happening in real life. Next character would be Heather. Heather is a transfer student from Ohio. She's fake, superficial, immature, and disloyal, in my opinion. Heather has only her own agendas in mind, and often you see her sweeping Melinda off. She's self-centered and throws fusses about the smallest of things. She doesn't seem all that concerned with Melinda's condition, but only made it worse. In my opinion, Heather is one of those high school girls who looks like she will never grow up and cannot take a stand and will sway towards whatever is in her benefit. For Nicole, Rachel, and Ivy. Now, Nicole, Rachel, and Ivy were her close friends before the incident, and they had abandoned Melinda. I find that they show a lack of responsibility as friends and failed to find out the truth before taking action, before acting out in such a manner by ostracizing her. In my opinion, they are actually a reflection of society where everyone judges and jumps to conclusions without finding out what would have caused a person to behave in a certain way, such as Melinda calling the police. They were so quick and immediate to ostracize her and treated her like a stranger, which pretty much throws out the whole value of friendship in this aspect. However, we know later in the story that Melinda eventually speaks to Nicole, and we find out that Nicole wasn't angry anymore, but was still wondering as to why Melinda had called the police that night. This shows that Rachel still carried on ostracizing Melinda, but never bothered to find out the actual reason why. And we have Mr. Freeman. Mr. Freeman plays the role of a role model, mentor, and helps Melinda grow throughout the story. He plays a role of a very vital role in Melinda's story, and it helps her get back on her feet. He encourages her to express herself through art and seems to be understanding to Melinda and not push her in and is not harsh to her. He opens her up to a world of art, and his class was probably the only thing keeping Melinda afloat in life. In my opinion, I think that we need more people in society who are like Mr. Freeman, who do take into consideration and do not push people in ways that they might not be able to express themselves or speak out for themselves. One of the thoughts that I was left with after reading this book was, we all know that society is not everyone is happy. We all have hate inside. We all are sad. And this book is a really true representation of people. I mean, it's really real. It's a reflection. Melinda's peers are reflections of. Is a reflection of society. You have a Heather in every group of friends maybe, and you have an Ivy, you have a Mr. Freeman, you have
all of them. You know, they represent. You have an Andy Evans, but it depends on how they manifest. But essentially, they all have the same story in the sense that one would probably be all for self-gain. Someone's hurting so badly inside, and someone else is hurting that person, but that person doesn't know. See, these are the things that are happening in society, and we close an eye to. We keep silent. We think it's okay, but you know the reality is we are not okay. Society is so selfish, and what we need is people who actually cares and people who actually loves. The thing is, we all know that we all hurt inside, but why are we still hurting each other even more? You know, this was something that after discussing with a few of my course mates, you know, like we did come across this point, and it did spark me thinking as to why is society like this? What can we do to fix this? So, yep, that's about it.
There are virtually too many things to talk about this book and impossible to fit it all into one video. I actually had a hard time doing this assignment initially. I wouldn't say I like the book, or nor will I say I hate it, but it just made me wonder who else is suffering silently out there.